All right, everybody, all you following, all you fellow listeners and contributors to the Struggling Hunters, welcome to another episode 76 of the Struggling Hunters podcast. Again, thank you all for that have participated and leaving comments in our platforms. We really do appreciate it. And if you haven't yet, like, subscribe, tell a friend, tell a buddy, because we enjoy seeing all that, and hopefully you enjoy it too. But this episode, we're got a couple things we're going to discuss. We're going to discuss the closing of Eric's archery elk hunt, and then we'll spend just a fraction of the time. The fall turkey hunt opened up here in Utah, and I went out for the opener, or so we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we're also going to throw in, if you listen to our last episode, we talked about the Fred Bear's 10 Commandments, which we thought was kind of a fun thing. Not necessarily fun, but also eye-opening on to how to basically be a better hunter. It's kind of a better hunter. What would you call it? And there are 10 commandments, but
it's kind of a play. I kind of look at it as like a short little playbook to hunting.
True.
I'll just throw this out there real quick. I actually read over it again whenever I was out hunting to remind myself of some of the factors and what I should be doing to try to find success. So I don't know. It was kind of a cool, just opened my phone and looked at it, and I was like, oh yeah, I need to work on doing that. So it was, just something that I actually used, put into play to help my chances.
And it's like you said, it's a quick little playbook. It's not like anything too in depth, not like anything you can't do. Everything in there is going to help. I feel like it would help your hunting experience almost probably 100% if you worked at it, because it all helps. So with that being said, as we're heading towards, we'll talk about Eric's hunt here first. And so we kind of went over number one last week, because that little rant was getting at. And this week we're going to be talking about number two, which is don't look for deer, look for movement, and remember that it's and remember that it's what they're looking for too, is movement. And I think a lot of times we get caught up looking for something, or I shouldn't say caught up. I know I just try to, I feel like my brain looks for what's there, and movement is a key. If you can spot them before they spot you, that's huge too. But anyway, so movement. So Eric, while you were out there hunting in Colorado, were you looking for movement?
Yeah, I was. I think that's kind of one of the key things. That's what these 10 commandments, they're simple, but they can be overlooked sometimes especially if you're struggling, no pun intended, but they can be overlooked. But yes, I definitely looking for movement. I think it is hard. I actually had an experience on one of my days where I ran into an elk, and we were both kind of moving a little bit, if you will, and we both caught each other at the same time, and both blew each other out of there, I guess you could say. So yeah, looking for movement, man. I think that's pretty important. I think kind of figuring out or understanding elk a little bit better. Like, sometimes I think we get caught up in trying to get to a certain spot or a certain area, or maybe we just get ourselves in a hurry, and yes, we're looking for movement, but sometimes we could be moving too much to see the movement.
Well, and I think that was like the second half of it too, is like how it says, remember that it's what they're looking for too.
Yeah.
So, not only are you making noise and the noise is actually an indicator of movement.
Yep.
And so
and to go a little, so there's a lot of cattle where I was hunting, and I kind of practiced with that a little bit. I spotted the cows before they spotted me, but my movement, and it was kind of they're just cows. They're farm animals basically. I mean, they are in the wild or whatever, but they noticed my movement too. Like I noticed them, and I was moving to get closer to them, kind of like I was kind of practicing my stalk, if you will, with just cattle. And I took note of it, and I was kind of taken back on how far away I was. I was probably 50 yards or so when they noticed me, and then they never took their eyes off me, and I didn't want to. So I had a couple other experiences where, like, if I walked right by them or whatever, they would start running off through the woods and doing that whole thing. So this one time in particular, whenever I was kind of working on that and seeing what I could get away with cattle, I actually walked around them so I wouldn't get them running and moving through the woods, and it seemed to work a little bit. But yeah, it's some, like, even cattle, they'll notice you a little further away than you expect. And it was something that I took note of, and I was like, okay, I need to sneak around a little bit better, maybe slow it down a little bit more. I actually sat on this little log, and the patience that animals have, and the attention span, especially whenever they're spooked, the cows, like, they wouldn't let off them. They wouldn't let off of my position. They just kept looking at me the whole time. And every once in a while, like, one would move their head and look away just a split second. And then, but if I went like this or something, just, or wave my hand a little bit, they swing their head right back at you and just stare at you, and like I said, I only brought that up because I was like, hey, this probably be a good test to just see how much I could get away with just cattle, and then kind of, understand that I could probably get away with 10 times less, with an elk. So,
right.
So it's just kind of something that I was kind of practicing and working with, and obviously being out there by myself. So I did a solo hunt for about 3 days. I did have my son with me for a couple of days, and then I had the solo hunt. So whenever you have a solo hunt, you get bored and you kind of do things that you probably wouldn't normally do, but just trying to entertain yourself. So that's what I did to entertain myself while I was out hunting. We'll go into all the stories and stuff and here in a little bit, but yeah, to key in on Fred Bear's 10 commandments and being number 2 about movement. It definitely something that you got to consider. It plays a factor. And I guess my lesson to the second commandment there with movement is that I need to slow down myself, because you just never know when you're going to run into an animal. So even if you're like, oh, I'm trying to get here and I'm trying to get here as fast as possible, if you're blowing everything out along the way and you're moving fast or moving erratically, it might affect your chances over to that draw that you're trying to get into. So just kind of a thought,
right,
and a statement to what we're talking about.
Right. Yeah. So, you kind of get that the movement is double-edged sword. You need to move to get somewhere, but you don't want to move because gives your position away. I guess that's where it comes in to understand, like, my brain just went I don't know what you want to say, but just it was like, okay, you're trying to get from point A to point B, you know, you're going to make noise and you want to minimize the noise, but at the same time, you don't like, then you go into like, well, how can I help myself get to there? Then it's like, well, you go into wind too. Like it is just trying to better, you know, like trying to better your situation getting into a spot. There's a lot of thought that goes into it. You know, your wind, how much noise you're making, how far you going to get there. I mean, you can really talk yourself out of really even going hunting.
Almost, yeah, yeah, or just put yourself back at the truck and almost give up. I mean, you know, because there's just so many factors. And that's something that I'll get into here in a few minutes. Just kind of telling like that story and some of the keys to help you be successful. That I feel like I feel like this year the elk hunting. There was so many little things that I learned that I really am excited about sharing in today's podcast. So whenever we get there.
Well, we can probably just head there because I think, you know, we kind of got done with number 2 on Fred Bear's commandments. So I guess let's just go ahead and head there towards, let's head into your the closing of your hunt.
Okay. Sounds good. So the closing of my hunt, I feel like I have a couple really good stories and I kind of said it earlier. The first couple days that I went out, I basically went out. The last day of hunting season was Thursday of this last week, and so I went out Saturday afternoon and actually didn't hunt much on Saturday. So pretty much Sunday to Thursday is what I had to hunt. But my first 2 days I had my boy with me, and which was fine. But we didn't hunt that hard those 2 days. Like it was a little more of a lax, like, you know, kind of go out and see things for what they were. And, you know, it wasn't real hard hunting.
Okay.
Not like I did after I took him back home to go back to school. I took him back home, and then I went back and I was like, okay, I told myself, I'm like, I got 3 days here. It's time to get it. And I feel like I worked pretty dang hard. I worked really hard on trying to get an elk. And so to open that up, the one thing that I learned, and it gets frustrating and it gets hard, but the one thing that I learned is everything counts. Everything. Trying to play your wind the best way you possibly can. Playing wind is hard, you know. I mean, like it's actually one of the commandments, but you know, you work from the bottom up in the morning, then work up down in the afternoon. But the mountains are drawn out the way they're drawn out, and that's hard. I mean, you know, you might have to get over a draw where you're kind of blowing up your spot through the wind because you're trying to get to another draw and start your way up. And
Right.
It can be difficult to play the wind, quote unquote, but it does matter. I really believe it matters. And you just got to constantly kind of play the wind and work on that. That was something that I really focused on and tried to work out this hunting season. And then taking chances and being aggressive too is another thing that I learned. And so I'm going to get into that, I guess, and start talking about the hunt. So my third day after I took my son back home. So I guess it would have been Tuesday. I did a little over 7 miles walking around, going through draws, up and down draws, really moving. Some of my takeaways on that is I probably should have slowed down a few times, and I dealt with weather too. So there was rain. Rain kind of played a factor. but I did all those miles and I saw one cow. I saw one cow, and that cow, it was really weird. I don't know where she popped out of. She might've heard me and like popped her head out to see what I was. Cause there was like this, it was kind of like this, I started going down into the draw, and then there was this like rock, I guess, or something that where she was kind of hiding behind. And and the wind started picking up, and I heard the trees creaking, right? And so I looked up, and I was watching and listening to this tree creak, and I no more than did that. And I'm like, wow, kind of sounds creepy or whatever, the trees just kind of, back and forth. And
Yeah.
I dropped my head and looked to the right of me as I'm looking up at this tree. I dropped my head, looked to the right of me, and there's this cow staring at me. And we both spotted each other, and she didn't waste no time. She was like, oh, that ain't good. Turned around, just took off. Got me excited, got my blood pumping, but she was gone. She didn't want nothing to do with me. And so that, like I said, that was a pretty big hiking day. 7 miles might not be the most, but, or, some people were like, that's it or whatever. But I mean, I was all over the place. I was going up and down draws and trying to take my time whenever I could. So in a, 14-hour day, whatever it was from opening light to dark, it was quite a bit of miles. I know by the time I got to camp, I was like, oh man, thank God that's over. Now I got to wake up and do it all over again tomorrow. But some of my tactics. So another thing that I did the second day after that, I actually changed tactics a little bit and jumped in my truck, and I kind of hunted the same area, but I didn't want to waste time from my camp to get to the same spot because there was closer access if I just basically drove up the road. So I was like, I'm just going to drive up the road, get to where I want to get to faster. Cause that was the thing, is I was taking off, a little before daylight to go out hunting. But then where I was wanting to hunt, it was taking me a couple hours to get over there, if not longer. And I'm like, well, I'm wasting that magical time. So I want to try to get out there faster. So I realized that there was a trailhead that I could get to in my truck a lot faster, jump out and go. Anyway, so I did that my second day. Kind of did a lot of the same thing, up and down draws, same thing, about the same amount of miles as far as, 7-8 miles or something like that. And then I got back to the truck a little bit early before dark. And I was like, well, I still have a couple hours of light left. So what am I going to do? So I kind of was looking around. I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go over here. And I was pretty wore out by this time. I mean, I done like 16 or so miles, the last 2 days, and pretty hard, like aggressive miles. And so I was kind of tired. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to go over here and pull into this spot and just go up the road a couple hundred miles, or a couple hundred yards, and yeah, I got to the point I was doing a couple hundred miles,
and you didn't get an elk.
And I didn't get enough. But I was like, I'm just gonna lay out some bugles, and this is kind of where a lot of things start changing for me and my perspective on things. To go back a little bit, Sunday night, or well, I guess it would have been, no, it was Sunday night, I guess. Sunday night bugling it was crazy. It woke me up in the middle of the night. I'm like, wake up, I hear all this bugle. I'm like, oh man, this is going to be good tomorrow. I was so excited. And I was really excited about all the bugling going on. And so I was like, let's get it, So I wake up that Monday morning, I'm all excited, and there's like nothing, and not even a bugle going on. And I guess I should back up on, it would have been Wednesday during the day. I heard a cow call. And then literally about 2 minutes later, I hear a locator call. And I was like, huh, okay. So I jumped up and I grabbed my bugle tube and I just started trying to get something going. Absolutely nothing. I couldn't get nothing going. The elk did not care about me at all. Well, I don't know. I'll get there later. Anyway, so that was it though. But I couldn't really get no bugles going, and it was kind of frustrating. Like during the day, you know, here I am, supposed to be like the very end of September. The bugles are supposed to be so hot and heavy and everything, and I can't get nothing going during the day. It just seems like they really clammed up and shut up during the day. So it is what it is with that. Um, so fast forward to that evening, whenever I walked in, just a couple hundred yards, and I'm like, well, I don't. There's, I, I'm just gonna lay out bugles. You know, it's getting close to dark. Let's just see what happens. Laid out some bugles, and pretty soon I started getting a few back, and I'm like, no way, this is pretty cool. And so I'm playing back and forth. Uh, oh man, my heart starts racing. So I'm hearing one that's directly in front of me, and I'm bugling back and forth, but that one's kind of at a distance. And then all of a sudden to the left of me, I'm hearing this one. I'm like, that one's coming in close. And I'm getting all excited, you know?
Yeah.
And so this probably goes on another 5-10 minutes, whatever. And finally, you know, really nice people, but they're like, hey, you know, and I didn't see them or whatever until they like announced themselves. And it was a couple other hunters. And I'm like, oh man, you know, and I was like, oh, I guess I, you know, bugled in some hunters, you know, we all conjured into the same spot. Um, and I failed to ask them because now I didn't hear that other one, that bugle, but when he started bugling and he told me, he's like, oh, we thought it was our friend that we're up here hunting with messing with us. And so, but I was like, there was another bugle that was directly in front of me. And then, but I kind of gave up on the whole thing and thought, oh, I bugled in a hunter. And it wasn't until I like took off and started driving away. And I go, wait a minute, what about I totally disregarded that bugle that was in front of me. So it could have been another hunter. I'm not denying that, but I kind of think that it was an elk that I was bugling to that was directly in front of me. But whenever they like, you know, announced themselves, and I was like, oh man, I bugled in a hunter, and I just like totally forgot about the elk in front of me. So this was my last night. So I had to drive down the road to get some service. So, you know, after calling the family and doing that whole thing, I called Joe and I'm like, you know, tell him the situation, what's going on. And I'm like, dude, it's been tough up here. It's been a little tougher than I predicted. And we talked about it, and he said, well, tomorrow morning, he's like, you have nothing to lose. It's your last day. Just bugle every 5 minutes, whatever, you know, even more than that if you have to. And so I was like, okay, you know, that makes sense. So I just went to town. I was bugling. I left almost as soon as I left my truck that last day. I started bugling right away, bugling and cow calls. I think I started off with some cow calls, warming up with that. And then I laid into the bugles, and dead silence, you know, and I'm frustrated. I'm getting frustrated because I'm like, you know, here's another year, no success. You know, nothing's working, and I'm not hearing a thing. And I'm doing this for a couple hours, and I find myself uh, kind of in the middle of this opening or halfway up this draw. I'm checking my wind, and I'm like, okay, my wind is okay. I'm not gonna get anything directly up from like the right of me or something, but you know, I'll blow something out there. But I kind of got everywhere else, you know, almost three what is it, 360 or whatever, you know, besides that little sliver where the wind is heading, and it's pretty consistent. So I'm like, so I'm kind of I'm kind of thinking to myself that the elk will come up out of the draw into the opening, or I guess maybe that's what I'm hoping, like best case scenario. And but I'm not getting anything in response. So I'm like getting kind of frustrated, almost wanting to give up. And it's getting a little chilly. The rain's starting to kind of sprinkle a little bit, and it's getting a little chillier. So I go to put on my coat, and I don't know. I probably laid out another locator bugle before I put on my coat, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to put on my coat. And I go to put on my coat. I know more than get my coat on, get my hood over. And about 5, 6, 7 cows, it happened so fast. I couldn't count them all. But I'll just say 6 cows and like 2 or 3 calves. They start running. Now I think what happened, and this is where I made a mistake, is I moved. Talking about movement, I moved. They saw my movement because they're looking for movement too. They saw my movement. It freaked them out. Now the odd thing is they all started running right in front of me, 10 yards away. So to remind you, it's a shock to me too. So I'm all over the place and grabbing, I'm like, just put on my coat. I don't have my bow in my hand. I'm not ready for these elk to be running right in front of me. So I'm scrambling, trying to knock an arrow, doing all this stuff. And about that time, it was a smaller 4-point, but this 4-point bull comes running in right behind the cows. And I'm like, oh no, so to back up, I was like, I'm going to go for a cow. I have an either sex tag. I'm going to go for a cow. Everybody wants to go for a bull, even if you have an either sex or not. You're always kind of hoping for the bull, but you'll take a cow if So I'm like, I'm going to take a cow. Well, so I'm trying to get everything together, scramble. I mean, this is all happening so fast. And then that bull comes out. I'm like, oh, there's a bull. And so they were all kind of on a dead run. So I was going to try to basically, as quick as I could, my heart's pumping, everything's going on. I'm like, I'm going to meet him. So I'm going to release that arrow as he's running past me or whatever. And it was close, guys. It was 10, he was 10, 15 yards away. It was so close. It makes me sick for this next part. He's running down, following his cows. And I kid you not, it was like he knew that something was happening and he hit the brakes. And in my mind, I feel like I messed up in a couple ways. I was trying to kind of meet him with the arrow to where, if he was still on that run, it would have probably been a good hit. But he like hit those brakes and I was so wound up. I couldn't pause long enough to say, make sure you're on the vitals. And the way it was all timed out, and I'm trying to piece this together the best I can because the experience was so like, just just such an adrenaline dump and so excited that I was getting this activity. I can't remember exactly what happened, but from the best of my knowledge, I think he hit those brakes kind of simultaneous to me pulling the trigger release. And that arrow, you can kind of catch a glimpse of those arrows. And I just kind of caught the glimpse of that arrow going right in front of this elk's chest and straight into the dirt. I didn't necessarily see it go into the dirt, but I swear that elk like looked at me, looked down at his chest and just started running. And, like, woo, that was close. And, yeah, very, very, very crazy. So, guys, to the ending of it's not quite the end, but, yeah, so I didn't get successful this year, but I was really, really close. The closest I've been with elk, and especially archery, which is exciting in itself. I'm excited that I got that opportunity, and there's a little bit of success in there that I called them in or whatnot, but definitely missed and wasn't successful. Now, I want to add though, like another thing that I did and something that you could try later on. There was a part of me that was like, wow, I just blew this all up and I messed it up. I screwed up. Like, I was so mad at myself, but I could still hear him running around in the woods. And I go, what do I got to lose? So I grabbed my bugle tube and I laid out a bugle, and it amazes me. I can't believe that it happened. I understand why it happened, because 5 seconds before that, I didn't hear one bugle, one cow, nothing. Right. And then all this chaos happened. I lay out the bugle, and I think it was that bull. I'm pretty sure it was that bull bugled back to me. And we were we were in a bugling match.
Huh.
So my thought, and I feel like I messed up here a little bit, but I'm like, well, I can't just bugle in the same spot that he just got shot at from, right? That was my thinking a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm going to be aggressive and I'm going to go after, he's giving me bugles and locators. I'm going to go after that sound and try to find him. And so me and him are going into bugling matches, and I'm hustling up this draw, and I'm bugling away. And I mean, we probably bugled back and forth by this time 8 times or something. And I'm moving up, and I don't know what happened. I never saw him again, but I was on the move, and I don't know. The only thing that I can think, well, there's 3 scenarios, I guess. He either winded me and said, oh, this is all BS, saw me, said, oh, that's not an elk, or he rounded up his cows, and that's what he was really doing, was just bugling back and trying to find his cows, which I don't know if that one happened because of all the chaos and everything. And then me bugling too. I mean, I had just as much chance to round up the cows too, in a sense, right?
Right.
I don't know if that's true or not, but anyways, he stopped bugling after so many bugles. Like, I couldn't get him to bugle again. I kept laying him out. I probably laid him out for another couple hours after that. And I would hear a cow call every once in a while, but I couldn't get nothing going after that. So that's kind of, I guess it's a hard out a little bit, but that's pretty much my story. That's pretty much what happened this hunting season. Very excited. The lessons that I learned, I feel like there's a couple valuable lessons, and to help other people too. Don't be nervous to do the calling. I was nervous at first. I was kind of like, I've elk called and stuff in the past. I've elk called and not hunted just because it was so cool to like hear an elk call back. I used to do it a lot in Idaho. We'd go up top of Adams grade there. I remember me and my buddy Josh doing it all the time, where we'd go up to top of Adams grade and middle of or right as dark, and start bugling, and hear them call back and stuff. And just always so cool, that they would do that. Anyway, so I bugled before, but it's been a long time. And the whole hunting season, I was a little nervous because of all the other hunters. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to, mess up somebody else's hunt, or I don't want to just call in other hunters. The thing is, though, is the other thing that I've learned that kind of combats that is, you get in there a mile or so, you're almost not gonna call in another hunter. It's they're a lot of other hunters don't get that far away from the road or from their camp or wherever their base is. You get a mile, 2 miles in, you're almost out there by yourself. Once in a while, you'll see another crazy guy be out there too, but it's a lot more seldom than a guy realizes. So don't be afraid to lay out your bugles and create your own chances. The other thing to remember is everything counts, and it's so hard. I mean, but everything, I mean, as much as I want to be like, is wind really a factor? It's a factor. And it sucks because sometimes you want to go up a draw, but the wind is not in your favor. And you're like, well, it's not going to do me any good because it's just going to blow everything out in front of me. So I'm just wasting energy and time. The other thing, I don't know if I can articulate it, but sometimes you get in there and you start overthinking. You're like, if I get something down here, it's going to be such a job to get it out. Right. And you almost want to retract, but I think I was kind of breaking this down in my head because I'm like, I need to be out here, whatever. And it's going to be a lot of work if I get something to hike it back to the truck. It's going to be a heck of a lot of work. Right. But if I get out here and I get something my first or second day, I'm spending the rest of my trip just hiking it out. I'm beelining it straight out there to where my meat is, and I'm hiking it straight back to my truck. And so, you think it's going to be more work. And I'm not saying it's not hard work, but I think if doing the extra work early in the hunt pays off later in the hunt, if that makes sense. As far as if you do get something, you can spend the rest of your time, if you have a 4 or 5 day hunting span, you get something like on the first or second day, you can pack everything out in the next day or two, maybe even the next day, your hunt's over. So instead of doing 8-9 miles every day and not getting nothing, like you could do that one day and then beeline it straight to your, so it shortens it up is what I'm saying. I don't know if I'm still articulating that right. Joe's kind of looking at me like I'm trying to pick up what you're saying. But
pretty much hunt hard the first day. So that way, like you're not spending. So yeah, go the extra mile the first couple of days and get yourself, what's the word? Success, get your success on the first half or the first part of the hunt. So that way you're not adding miles to your hunt later in the hunt because you're still doing the 8 to 10 miles a day.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you could just, park the truck on the closest road to the, because especially where I was hunting, everything's circled by roads. A lot of it's like 3 to 4 miles in from the road, but there's other spots where you're like, oh, I can come in from up here and I'm only 2 miles away. Yeah, it's downhill. There's ways to work it and make it all make sense for you. So, it was just kind of a thought because I feel like sometimes the reason that I had the thought is because sometimes I think it can dictate like how hard you want to hunt. Right. And I feel like a lot of people are like, I only want to go a mile in because if I get something, or a half mile in, because if I get something, it's going to be hell carrying it out. Well, yeah, it's going to be hell, but more than likely you're not going to get anything a half mile in because they're not a half mile in. They're more 2 miles in or something. But if you get there that first day and you happen to get something that first day, which probably is some of your best chances because like the opening weekend of hunting, for example, you get something that first day. The pressure hasn't been there yet, all this stuff kind of adding up to where it kind of ups your chances of getting something because the pressure hasn't been there. You get it your first day, you get everything out, your hunt season's done. I kind of wish I would have had that mentality. I mean, I feel like I put on a lot of miles this hunt season, which was great for I feel like my fitness has definitely increased and, a lot of good things have happened because it was a long season for me, but I'm like, man, I feel like next year, like I'm going straight to where I'm probably going to go straight to where I was on the last day, the first day of next year and see what I can get and see if it happens. And I another thing, another tip or another idea is when you're elk hunting, hunt your butt off, hunt your ass off. I'll just say it, hunt your ass off. And you're going to learn things and you're going to learn where these elk are at and where they hang out at. Because even though I didn't get successful, I had these other little successes where I found out where they kind of like to hang out at. I found I was finding new new drainages, new water holes, new wallows. I'd find wallows everywhere. And I'm like, man, I thought this place was pretty dry around here, but there's a lot of water around here. Actually, when you actually get down in these draws and stuff, there's water everywhere. And so it was a really big learning experience, but I had to work my butt off this last weekend, especially, and getting down in those draws, walking those benches, the sign. And that's some kind of going back. I know I'm really going down a rabbit hole or rambling on, but I wish I would have played those benches where I was seeing a lot of sign, because I'm like, man, there's sign for days around here. But I wasn't seeing elk. But what I should have done was had slowed down my approach and maybe hung out in that area, laid out the cow calls and the bugles, and because they were obviously in there at some point or at some time, or maybe they live down in there or whatever. But I mean, it gets frustrating whenever you see all this sign and you don't see anything, but you're also moving so much trying to find where they're at, quote unquote. You might be blowing them out. Yeah, they are in there, but you're blowing them out because you're moving around trying to find them so much. So that, like, slowing down, and whenever you get into that sign, just slow down, stay there for a couple hours. My experience on Thursday, my last day, whenever what I learned is I stood in that spot for 2 hours. I moved a little bit, like I put on my coat and stuff, and then they finally came in. I mean, if I would have just held on for another minute before I put on my coat, they would have came in. Hopefully I would have spotted them. I wouldn't have moved. I probably still would have got excited, but I would have had more time to create a better shot for myself. But because I moved, they saw me, they got excited. The crazy thing is there were so many ways for those elk to go. They could have turned around and ran away the other way. They ran right in front of me, 10, 15 yards away. Like, there was a kind of a game trail there in front of me, but I was like, why are you all running in front of me? You should be running away from me. It was so weird, their decision to do that. But I was thankful that they did, because that bull elk followed along where the cows were going. Anyway, yeah, just a lot of learning lessons. I know that I kind of rambled long there, but a lot of learning lessons, and hopefully I can bring more next year. And I'll save it for next podcast, but my hunt's not over yet. So I definitely have other plans and things going on for this year, for hopefully to find some more success. But yeah, I feel like I had a pretty, without getting actual successful, I had a pretty successful hunting trip, and it took a lot of hard work. And that's, you just can't be scared of the hard work. If there's a takeaway to all this, I learned myself even, I always think that I work pretty hard, but I worked even, you have to work harder than what you even think hard work is to create your own success, and everything matters. That's one of the biggest keys. And that's something that I'm going to be learning for the rest of the year. Everything matters. And I'm going to try to take it the rest of this year. I'm going to really try to take into account, and try to really think about that everything matters, for next year, to help me hopefully get successful finally. So anyways, Joe, I know that was long-winded, but that's all I got. That was my story. Guys, if you're still listening, thanks for listening. I'm not trying. Do you have anything else? You have your,
I'll just talk about my turkey hunting and then but there's not much to really say other than I found a spot with some turkeys, went back up to them. I didn't see any turkeys, but the sign was there. Like, elk, or not elk, sorry, turkey droppings. There was turkey feathers, so like they're fresh feathers and fresh droppings. So they're in the area, and I'll be going back up again. But that was just Friday after work opener. I just thought I'd buzz up there and see what I could see. And I saw some good signs. So I'll be back. Hopefully be back to tell a turkey hunt story to you too.
There you go. Perfect.
That was it. Don't have anything else to share on that.
Perfect. Well, I'll go ahead and give us a hard out and go from there. Just give us a hard out. So guys, thanks for listening to the Struggling Hunters. I hope you enjoyed the stories. And like Joe said earlier in the podcast, like, share, comment, we really appreciate those. It really makes our week whenever we get those comments. And then also the sharing part, if there's anybody that you think would enjoy the hunting stories and talking about hunting and escaping from the world of politics and everything else, that's one thing that me and Joe, I don't know if we've ever said it, maybe we have, but we really try not to be political. Everybody has an opinion on that. But one of our premises for this hunting channel was to try to as much as possible give everybody that time to escape from the political world and just listen to good old hunting stories, good old fashioned hunting stories. So, if there's anybody out there that you think would enjoy that kind of stuff, try to give them a share or share it with them and appreciate you. Thanks for listening to the Struggling Hunters. We're out.
Bye.